Mr Chairman, I welcome the opportunity to have the debate about the criminal disentitlement provisions of this bill, because Labor members are effectively arguing that the provisions in the law as they stand are fine and they work. Well, if that is the case, why has there not been a single case of disentitlement in a decade? A single case of disentitlement in a decade. So for them to stand up in this House and to say the minister's being disingenuous, the minister's being dishonest, because there are provisions in the law right now that allow criminals to be disentitled, I simply say to them, it may be in theory, actually members like myself on the government side are actually interested in what happens in practice. And the current provisions do not work. The legal threshold is too high. And why do we know that? We know that from the case law. If we take the most recent example, nice. Now, how many in the last decade? And I'll tell you what's happened to Mr Parker, and I gave Mr Parker the decency of hearing him out. Perhaps he might also do the same for me if he wants to have this debate. In the most recent case, a person where ACC did go to court, the case was actually thrown out and the person did receive lump sum compensation. So for Labor members to argue... Now, the second thing was that Ms Mackey argued that I was saying that anybody who was convicted of an offence with more than 2 years imprisonment would automatically be disentitled. And the member says that's right. She misses out a key point. And this is where Labor members are not saying what the proposed law says. And it's this. Not only do they need to be found guilty of committing an offence with a penalty greater than 2 years, they need to be sent to prison or Home D. Both those tests. That's not what Iona Mackey said. That is not what Iona Mackey said. Now, the issue and the challenge I have is that when members opposite point out minor offences and say a person's going to lose their entitlement, I challenge them, go to the practical decisions of the court. Does the average law-abiding New Zealander who the exact example that Moana Mackey gave, was that is overtired, crosses the centre line, is involved in a serious accident, under our current legal system, do we really think in the court of law those people are being sent to prison? Not on your life. No, that is not true. And Mr Parker knows better than that. The reality is, our judges are under enormous pressure. The reality is, most people that drunk drive don't go to prison on first offence. It's only when there are multiple offences, one after another, gross irresponsibility, that our judges send people to prison or are requiring home detention. And that is where Labor members are being quite disingenuous about these criminal disentitlement provisions. The last bit they're not mentioning, quite deliberately I suspect, is there's also a provision for the minister, if they believe that the disentitlement is unfair, is to provide for it. And the further point they are not acknowledging is there is no question from members on this side of the House that this is a humane society and people should get emergency and other care funded by ACC. What we are saying, and I make no apologies for saying, is that, yeah, absolutely, Mr Parker wants to raise the Graham Burton case. I do say, and the Graham Burton did not get lump sum compensation to the best of my knowledge, nor did he get income compensation. The issue there is his prosthesis. And I have to say, I make no apologies for the fact that this bill will say that unless a medical practitioner provides that is essential for his day-to-day life, he wouldn't get it. Do I think that New Zealanders welcome the fact that they provided that man with a prosthesis that has enabled him to go on and commit a further attempted murder? I have to say for my part, I say I'm disgusted that my ACC levies gave that man the mobility to attempt murder. And that is where we do differ. We do differ. That is the member... I'm sorry? No. What David Parker is ignoring, and I challenge him to look at the video of Graham Burton in prison with that prosthesis attempting to commit another murder. And he argues we need to provide him with that mobility so he can continue to consider those sorts of acts of thuggery, and I make no apologies for saying no to Graham Burton and in that case.
Colin Pillay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.